Okay, it's just gone 7 o'clock. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet. My name is Councillor Shantanu Rajawat. I'm the leader of the Council and also chair of this meeting. I'm joined here by my Cabinet colleagues and officers. Cabinet members have the right to vote in this meeting. Officers obviously are here to support as and when required, if requested. I'm also delighted to be joined by the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Sierra Raza, and the leader of the opposition, Councillor Peter Thompson, who have a standing invite but do not have the right to vote at this meeting. There's quite a bit on the agenda this evening. I hope you get something out of it. Can I welcome those who are watching online, but also sat in the audience this evening? Just by way of polite reminder for those in the audience, this is a meeting in public, not a public meeting. So please do respect those that are speaking, even if you may disagree with what they have to say. They are here to vote and carry the business of the council. I'm going to start with agenda. Oh, sorry, and just to make cabinet members aware, please do note alongside the papers we have got a supplementary paper as well, which you should have when we get to that item number 3. Going to start with apologies for absence. As far as I can tell, everyone is here. I've not had any apologies at all. Any declarations of interest from members? Councillor Dunn?
Chair, all my relevant declarations have been made through my register of interests.
Thank you, Councillor Dunn. That is noted. Any other declarations of interest? Any communications? I think I can probably speak on behalf of all Cabinet colleagues that we've received communications on agenda item 3. I think we've all received communications on that. So are there any apart from communications on agenda item 3? No. Okay. Good. And please can members note the monitoring officer's note on interests, which is within your agenda pack as well. Now move on to agenda item 2, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of March. I'll go through them page by page. For accuracy and matters arising, please do raise your hand. Page 1, page 2, page 7, page 8, page 9, and finally page 10. Can't see anyone indicating. Can we agree those minutes? Agreed. Thank you very much. Right, we now move on to agenda item 3, which is pages 11 to 14 and 2 to 9 of the supplementary. That's Staveley Road and Burlington Lane experimental schemes final review. This is a report by Councillor Dunn, however, was subject to pre-scrutiny work by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So I'm going to start by asking the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Raza, just to give us a run through of that meeting. Can I put on record my thanks to your committee, Councillor Raza, for the pre-scrutiny work that you did. I'd now like to hand over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Rajwat. Okay, so Cabinet has received a reference report containing the clerk's notes from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting last Tuesday, the 11th of April. I should highlight that they are not approved minutes. The minutes will be approved as usual at our next meeting in May. However, I'm satisfied the notes would provide a fair account of the committee's considerations. A wide range of views were expressed by Overview and Scrutiny Committee members. I ask Cabinet to remember that. In summary, the committee members highlighted concerns regarding visitor access, the operation of exemption schemes, particularly cost for carers, communications, including engagement with businesses, signage, and speed. For clarity, I asked members of Overview and Scrutiny to vote on recommendations A1, 1A to 1C in Appendix 1 of the committee report. A link to that appendix is provided in paragraph 3.1 of the Cabinet report, and the recommendations are also echoed in recommendations A and B in your Cabinet report. The result of the majority committee vote are confirmed at the end of the note. The only recommendation of the 3 not supported is the implementation of a timed access restriction on Burlington Lane. The reasons for this largely concern the potential creation of a through traffic or rat run. In concluding my report to you as chair of the committee, I would ask you to note that, one, it was recognised by committee members that there are overriding and positive public interest aims involved in the scheme, and it is hoped that going forward, Cabinet will want to consider the concerns raised regarding visitor access, the operation of exemption schemes, communications, signage, and speed. Recommendations 1A and 1C in detail. A, implement a permanent traffic management order for an access restriction on Staveley Road in line with existing experiment traffic management order, subject to statutory consultation. The recommendation was supported by a committee of 4 votes to 2 against. Implement a permanent traffic management order for the introduction of a timed access restriction between 8 and 9 a.m. and from 2:45 to 3:45 Monday to Friday during school term time on Burlington Lane, between its junction with A316 Burlington Lane and Staveley Road, subject to statutory consultation. This recommendation was not supported by the committee, with 5 votes against and 1 abstention. The majority of the committee were concerned about the creation of a rat run if the no entry restrictions were placed by a school street. Continue with existing experimental traffic management order until such times as a permanent traffic management order have been brought into operation. This recommendation was supported by a committee with 4 votes to 2 against. When voting, committee members asked Cabinet to take account of their views expressed during the meeting and captured in the reference note. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Raza, for that. Can I ask Councillor Dunn, please, to respond?
Thank you very much. So I'm Councillor Dunn, Councillor Catherine Dunn, Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Transport, Environment and Climate Strategy. So I'd like to start by thanking Councillor Raza, the overview and scrutiny committee as a whole, the relevant ward councillors and the residents for discussing and submitting their views on the proposed decision on the Staveley Road and Burlington Lane experimental traffic schemes. As you've heard, this was considered and discussed by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 11th of April. So I'm very grateful for everyone's views and input, which has been considered ahead of Cabinet's decision tonight. For Cabinet's benefit, I would like to remind you of the original aims of the scheme and of the wider South Chiswick livable neighbourhood. These were to increase levels of walking, cycling and public transport use, to reduce car use in the local area, in particular for short journeys and those centred around the school run, to improve road safety and reduce collisions, to improve personal safety and security, to improve air quality, and to help local businesses and the area's economy to thrive. So although you may have heard claims to the contrary, the scheme was designed using a whole area approach to address these aims. It was implemented under experimental traffic orders in order to give residents and businesses the chance to feedback on the scheme whilst it was in use. Subsequent changes to the scheme were made in response to feedback received. And 2 such changes were the extension of the original school street hours on Staveley Road and the introduction of the no entry restriction to Burlington Lane from the A316 to address increased traffic volumes in that location. So hence these 2 aspects of the scheme are still under experimental traffic orders and a decision needs to be made regarding their future. The scheme has come under some criticism and I will address some of that. I agree with those who say that the scheme is somewhat complex. The reason for that complexity is because we have tried to be flexible with this scheme. So the flexibility that we have introduced, for example, allowing exemptions for residents and reducing the operational hours of the restrictions in response to feedback, have given greater freedoms for those living within the scheme, but they do make it more complicated and more difficult to communicate in a simple manner. They probably have had a detrimental impact on compliance with the scheme, meaning that more PCNs have been issued, even though that might sound counterintuitive. If you have a scheme that's in place for 24 hours a day, it's easier for people to understand that and therefore comply with the scheme. It's also instructive for us to consider low traffic neighbourhoods in general and how they've been introduced in other London boroughs and other areas of the country. The majority of these schemes use either hard barriers or 24/7 ANPR filters to allow emergency vehicles to pass, and in some cases to grant exemptions for disabled residents. They do not, in general, provide general exemptions for residents, as the aim is to discourage the use of cars, especially for shorter journeys. At the other end of the spectrum, there is the scheme which is often mentioned that has been introduced in South Fulham, which doesn't aim at reducing car use amongst residents or people visiting the area. It only aims at stopping through traffic by those living outside of the borough. So the South Chiswick scheme sits somewhere in the middle of these. Local residents have exemptions from some traffic restrictions, namely the ANPR filters on Staveley Road and Hartington Road, but not others, the hard barriers on Staveley Road, Harvard Hill and Burlington Lane. And during the operation of the scheme, the two original exemption whitelists have been amalgamated into one and extended to a wider area. There has been much discussion about the way the scheme has been implemented and how it's been communicated to residents. And I agree that some of this could have been done better and that we can always learn and make improvements in this area. But I'm also well aware from speaking to colleagues from other London boroughs that there are no easy fixes. If we want people to change their habits when it comes to activities that have an effect on the environment, both local and global, then we have to be prepared to not always be popular. And in introducing low traffic neighbourhoods, whilst we don't take away anyone's choice of how to travel, we do seek to make some choices more desirable and others less so. So you have heard from Councillor Raza on behalf of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the view that the committee has formed on each of the recommendations in the Chief Officer decision. And these were recommendation A was supported by the committee, and this was to have a permanent traffic management order for an access restriction on Staveley Road in line with the existing experimental traffic management order subject to statutory consultation. Recommendation B regarding Burlington Lane was not supported, with the majority of the committee being concerned about the creation of a rat run if the no entry restrictions were replaced by a school street as put forward in the Chief Officer decision. And recommendation C was supported by the committee, and that was that the existing experimental traffic management orders would run until such time as the permanent traffic management orders have been brought into operation. So my recommendation to Cabinet is that we accept these three recommendations proposed by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So this will mean that we retain the current no entry restriction from the A316 to Burlington Lane, and therefore proceed with a permanent traffic management order for that restriction that will be brought in by the 1st of July this year. The existing experimental traffic management orders and the one on Staveley Road will remain until these permanent orders are brought into operation. So to be clear, this will see the implementation of a permanent measure at the junction of Burlington Lane and the A316. In addressing the wider points raised by overview and scrutiny, I would like to make some further comments and recommendations for Cabinet. Much has been said about visitors' access, in particular carers' access, and as I mentioned and said at overview and scrutiny, we can do more on the communication of access in and through the scheme to avoid further confusion. Every address in the scheme is accessible by everyone in any form of vehicle. Therefore, whilst I do not recommend to Cabinet a visitor permit scheme, I do believe that much more can be done to support carers' access and communications. So I'm proposing that Cabinet agrees to the following. Access exemptions for all carers, irrespective of whether they hold residential parking permits or not, noting that those who require residential parking permits would have to apply in the usual way. I understand this has been the cause of one of the barriers to carers accessing exemptions at the moment. Secondly, to align the council's approach to exemptions for carers and district nurses. And with regards to district nurses, I would ask that we review the parking permitting for district nurses and address that through our upcoming parking strategy. Relating to communications, working with ward councillors, I am proposing that Cabinet agrees to the following. That a letter is provided to all residents within the South Chiswick livable neighbourhood on the final decision by Cabinet. This letter to include a map clearly outlining access for residents and visitors, and to include a set of myth-busting and frequently asked questions. I also recommend to hold a briefing session with ward councillors on the final scheme so that officers can answer any questions that may remain, and for our website to be updated to reflect the final and whole scheme for South Chiswick livable neighbourhood. There have also been concerns raised about speed and signage. So to address the feedback around speed, I propose that Cabinet agrees to the following. So the Chief Officer decision refers to vehicle activated signs being implemented to monitor speed, and these should continue to be implemented. I propose that officers should liaise with residents groups on the location of these speed signs within the South Chiswick livable neighbourhood. I also propose that we formally ask the police to engage with the local community on their concerns about speed, given that enforcement of speed rests with the Metropolitan Police. I propose that we review all the 20-mile-per-hour road markings within the livable neighbourhood and introduce new markings if necessary. And I propose that we undertake a further speed survey within the next 12 months to review the impact of the actions above and to publish the details of this on our website. And to address the feedback on signage, I propose that Cabinet agrees the following. So the Chief Officer decision outlines the compliance of signage, and following a signage audit that took place, there are further warning signs that can be added ahead of joining the scheme on the A316. So I recommend that this is implemented as recommended by the Chief Officer decision. I would also propose that additional signs, taxi exemption signs, should be added to the relevant parts of South Chiswick livable neighbourhood to assist in the clarity for Hackney carriages on their use of the scheme. So in conclusion, I ask that Cabinet accepts the position of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and these additional proposals that I've outlined. In addition to earlier changes, these demonstrate that we continue to consider and balance the views of residents with our policy position as a council on our ambitions for transport, climate and public health.
Thank you, Councillor Dunn. That was very comprehensive. on those proposals, I'll formally second and reserve my right to speak, so that it's now open for discussion and debate. Anybody indicating? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Thompson, as mentioned earlier, leader of the Concerted Group, ward councillor in the South Chiswick scheme, lived, cycled, walked there for 23 years. So all of this is perhaps based on lived experience. I'm sorry that we, in a sense, got to the situation of having a chief officer decision, which was bonkers and would have undermined everything that has been gained by what has been done. And it was a suggestion regarding Burlington and Staveley, and I think it's worth mentioning this, on which there had been no consultation. There had been no consultation on that idea that was proposed. So I think what's been accepted through scrutiny and by Councillor Dunn makes perfect sense, that we keep things as they are. We keep Staveley as a school scheme and we don't reopen Burlington Road, because obviously that would lead to it serving as a rat run. And I think what you've outlined tonight, and I was trying to scribble down as you were talking, makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of practical things there. I suppose I'm being a bit sceptical in some ways. I think the letter will be the 7th letter we've had on the scheme in the area over the last couple of years. We've had briefing sessions. I think we perhaps need a bit more than briefing sessions. Again, it would be helpful sometimes if there was an acceptance that councillors and maybe residents had ideas of their own that they could feed into the process, as opposed to being sort of, presented with a fait accompli as to this is what we think is the best to do. I think, and again, you fairly mentioned it, there is widespread opposition. Your own consultation that happened on the wider scheme shows that up to about 80% of people opposed what is in place. I think when you drill down into their opposition and the points that they made, it's interesting that most people were making comments on the scheme as a whole, in addition to Staveley and Burlington, because it is a scheme that impacts on the entire Strand on the Green, Grove Park area. So obviously you do have wider concerns when you ask people as to what is going on. I think what we need to do, in addition, if I could suggest, is freeze everything, because again, what we're suggesting tonight is just sort of going back to what is the case now, and we're still not, I don't think, despite the points you made, Councillor Dunn, going to address several of the issues that do concern residents. And I think the fundamental problem is that we're approaching it in a very sort of piecemeal sort of way. So yeah, it's totally correct that you can access any part of South Chiswick down Sutton Court Road or Parklet Road, or all the other bits of lanes where you can get in. But in a sort of odd, weird sort of way, say, for example, you lived around near Annie's or the train bridge and just beyond on Thames Road, you can't drive through there if you're a resident in the wider Grove Park area. So if you lived in one of those roads, Review Terrace or whatever, you have to stay on the North Circular, you have to get onto the A4, you have to come down Sutton Court Road, you've tripled your journey time, and that is that sort of thing that doesn't make much sense to people. Yeah, I know you're trying to reduce, but these are people who are driving into their area, and they are forced to take a journey that can take 3 times as longer. And sometimes, like we had recently when the A4 was closed down, can take half an hour to an hour to get around there. So it's having an impact. I think there's a question, all my waffle, about the access thing. Obviously, one of the issues that was really interesting and only came out towards the end of all this process was that real concern about carers. Now, you know as well as I do that often carers are provided by private companies. You don't get the same care every day. It's not, the nurse or the carer who's the same person. It could be a succession. It could be different carers for different aspects of people's sort of conditions. So are we saying that all those people can apply for exemptions? I certainly hope that is the case. Again, the speed thing, I do wonder whether it's going to be addressed by more flashing lights. We have some of those. We know from Transport for London that one of the biggest culprits in speeding down Sutton Court Road are the buses. And I think we need to think about that. But I don't know whether that would address the issue. It's that funny old paradox, because the area is often quite deserted now, because you can't get into it. I think motorists put the foot down, which I think maybe is an odd sort of unintended consequence of the scheme. when I was re-elected last May, the signage was being looked at. We were told last May it was compliant. We were told that it would be improved. So I'm delighted that that's actually finally going to happen. I think we really want, at the end of the day, a simpler scheme that makes more sense. I don't think it's because it stops at 7 and it's not 24/7. I don't think that is what we're talking about. And I'll just finish with this one. It is a, South Chiswick livable neighbourhood. I wonder, has it made my bit of Chiswick, my bit of Hounslow more livable or less? A former councillor on this authority wrote to me about 2 weeks ago, and he passed on. Again, it's just a little example, but it's the most recent one I've got. So his grandson plays basketball twice a week at Chiswick Community School, and the people who run that, they're going to move. They're going to move location, because a lot of parents they're put off, they don't understand it, or they have been fined, or they can't easily get to Chiswick School for all the restrictions that are in place. And that means that he, who lives in the area, can't go to basketball anymore, because he now doesn't have time to get home from his school and get to Chiswick if it moves, as they suspect, to somewhere in Hammersmith. And that's just a little example. There's many more I could mention about how it's impacted on people in the area. My final point is just going back to the report itself, and just take perhaps slightly disagree with the wording in it. It says on page 12, 5.2, that evidence gathered from the trial for key indices such as traffic volumes, air quality, and road safety all indicate that this scheme has been a success. Well, I've seen it. We've all seen the PowerPoints that were produced. I think residents groups have hold of the raw data behind it. At the time, I think it certainly was the case, for obvious reasons. If you stick a barrier there and a camera and you're fining people 65 quid, well, of course, the number of cars using those roads has decreased by half. Of course, that is the case. But I would say in this forum, just to have it on record, that all the other evidence in terms of air quality, in terms of increase in cycling, pedestrian, and road speed and casualties and all the rest of it shows at this point in time no change whatsoever. I think the phrase that was used was marginal difference. You're looking at very flat graphs that don't go anywhere. I think one of the complications there is there's not much data prior to the scheme. So it is hard to get, I appreciate that. And I suppose we're hoping, as it probably indicates in 5.3, that in the fullness of time, these things will come better. I think my final point, as I say, not a very well-crafted speech, it literally is scribbled on this bit of paper, is the idea that we could have done this a lot better, and I think you've accepted that. And I think one thing in the decision-making process across the council is please do at an earlier stage use the expertise and the local knowledge of ward councillors and residents. I think at no stage in this particular scheme, and I've only been back on the council for a year, do I think I've been asked for my input. I've been asked to comment on what has been proposed. I've been asked to criticise what is put before me. I don't think I've ever been asked to, well, what would I do better? What would I do differently? And I think when we do that as a council, when we have real meaningful consultation, we normally end up with something a bit better. And I think my final point, my third final point, isn't it? And I will shut up, I promise you, is given that obviously, as you said very clearly and honestly tonight, it is to stop us using our cars as much as we want. One of the reasons is to stop us using our cars as much as we want to. I think people in my neck of the wood would feel a bit less like they were guinea pigs if they knew that these schemes were going to be rolled out across the rest of the borough. And I think we're looking we are interested if they're so good. And obviously you've learned a lot as you've accepted from this scheme what worked and what hasn't worked. We're looking forward to the time scale when they do roll out and perhaps deliver the claimed benefits for other parts of the borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. 3 final points. No, that wouldn't be right. Councillor Bruce.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, I have to say I agree with a lot of what Councillor Thompson said there, and I thank him for his comments on that. I think there was a lot of sense, and he made a lot of sense out of what Councillor Dunn said, which was also a lot of sense. It's a really complex, it's really complex, this, and I think it's not just because this is complex. You know, in this particular case, it's the whole situation of trying to organize things for residents in a way that is meaningful and works for them and works for our borough to provide the outcomes that we're hoping for is incredibly hard to do. This isn't an easy close this road, do that. And I know, I understand, and I've spoken to not as many as I know Councillor Thompson would have done in Chiswick, but I've spoken to a couple of residents, and they've said that it just seems it does feel like that. I think what you said today, Catherine, is very clearly that it's been done in a very thought out way, but that there is a huge amount of learning we can take from this. And on Councillor Thompson's final point, I absolutely agree with that. It's not about Chiswick being guinea pigs for the rest of the borough and then being left to just get on with it and we carry on in our own way. We, the rest of the borough, I live in Isleworth, Hounslow borders, we also need to step up. And I hope as well that in the fullness of time, there will be other schemes that come forward that mean that we can that we can show that this is a borough-wide thing in the variety of different ways that work and that work for the residents there. And there'll be learning that we can take from this in order to make what we've got in the other areas much better. As an anecdote, there was just the road, a relatively main road. It's kind of used as a cut through from sort of the A4 down to the 316 through my neck of the woods. And there was some work done right in the middle and the whole road was closed off. This was about a year ago. And the first couple of days where it's closed off, everyone's used to turning left down my road and going down. The first couple of days, everyone's moaning about it. After about a week, everyone said, "Oh, isn't this fantastic? There's no traffic going down there. It's wonderful. It's quiet. It's calm. We feel we can walk more safely." I'm not saying, that should have been made permanent. I think it was Thames Water and it was, about 3 weeks and then it was gone. But it goes to show that, these things can have very positive impacts on areas. And it's not just about doing it in a piecemeal way and doing it here, there and everywhere. It's having that wider strategy. And this South Chiswick livable neighbourhood strategy is there to the benefit of everybody that is using it. It's difficult because, and I disagree with Councillor Thompson saying this is a bonkers decision. I do disagree on that. The reason the decision was there in the chief officer's decision was trying to respond to some of the things that had been said. It was trying to be, as Councillor Dunn said, flexible as possible to meet the needs of everybody. And it is going to be hard to do that. But I come back to the fact, and I think Kath, you said this, the aims are to reduce the through traffic, to make the area safer for people to walk and cycle, to reduce car use and to see improvements in air quality. And while some of the data may be difficult to judge on that, I think those aims are absolutely 100% the aims that we should be striving for here and across the borough. And that we should do, as all of us, councillors, residents, businesses, whatever, do all that we can to meet those. However difficult it is, however inconvenient it is for me not being able to turn left out my end of my road, perhaps, or whatever comes forward, we need to be able to get that right for everybody. So thank you very much. I'd say, as has been said already, thank you to the overview and scrutiny. Thank you to Kath and Councillor Thompson who've spoken already.
Thank you, Councillor Bruce. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Councillor Garwal.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Tom, as well as Peter Thompson, for putting your views across. Unfortunately, I do not agree with your comment you made that a consultation was not done. A rigorous consultation was done for more than 12 months. And Councillor Dunn, I really appreciate you have taken a very tough decision. And when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. And looking at the long-term objectives and the plans of our council that we want a greener and cleaner Hounslow, we are going to be achieving our objectives by doing this, not only in Chiswick, but throughout the borough. And we are a listening council, and we have kept our promise. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Garwal. I can't see anyone else indicating. So we will, Councillor Dunn, would you like to sum up?
Yeah, so there was there's quite a lot there, but I appreciate everyone's comments and thank you, especially Councillor Thompson for your comments as well. I think that was pretty constructive. So appreciate that. I mean, I suppose the point is about the what next, isn't it? And is it just no? It's not just a scheme for South Chiswick. I mean, there was a background to it that I've been through before in terms of funding that was available at the time for the Livable Neighbourhoods project, and we didn't just choose Chiswick. We applied for funding for Feltham as well, but we weren't successful in receiving that. But I do want to move on. It has been a long and tough thing for lots of people, not just me. And I do want to be able to learn from that and what we do in the rest of the borough as well. We did, of course, bring forward a cabinet paper. My predecessor brought forward a cabinet paper looking at how we could implement LTNs in other parts of the borough. And it went through a call-in, and quite a memorable one for me, having been asked to resign, but I didn't. I'm still here. So yes, we do want to do that. I think there's definitely things that we've learned that we'll be able to take heed of as we move forward. And it doesn't necessarily mean that everything that we do in future will be the same as what has been implemented here. But it's definitely not something that is just for Chiswick. I don't think I have anything more to say, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dunn. Thank you, everyone, for your contribution. Right. Cabinet, we've got a number of recommendations here. So just to be absolutely clear, starting with page 11 on your agendas, Cabinet is asked this evening to agree A1, B and C with an implementation of the 1st of July. In addition, Councillor Dunn has made a number of other recommendations. Do you want me to go through them?
Sorry, what have you just told people they're doing?
A1, not 2.
Not 2, yeah.
B and C. And then access exemption for all carers, irrespective of whether they hold residential parking permits or not. Noting that those who require residential parking permits would have to apply in the usual way. Align the council's approach to exemptions for carers and district nurses. Review the district permitting for district nurses through the parking strategy. Also, a letter provided to all residents within South Chiswick livable neighbourhoods on the final decision. The letter will include a map clearly outlining access for residents and visitors and a set of myth-busting frequently asked questions. A briefing session with ward councillors on the final scheme and for officers to answer any questions that remain on access. The website to be updated to reflect the final and whole scheme for South Chiswick livable neighbourhood. Vehicle activated signs being implemented to monitor speed, and that these should be continued to be implemented. And it's proposed that officers should liaise with resident groups on the location of these speed signs within South Chiswick livable neighbourhood. Formally ask the police to engage with the local community on their concerns about speed, given the enforcement of speed rests with the Metropolitan Police. Review all 20 miles per hour road markings within the livable neighbourhood and introduce new markings if necessary. Undertake a further speed survey within the next 12 months to review the impact of the actions above and to publish the details on our website. Where am I next? Chief's Office decision already does the signage. Further advanced warning signs are added on the 316. And I think I'm looking at Victoria. Is that all of the recommendations that Councillor Dunn? There was something about taxi signs, which I seem to have. Was it? Oh, sorry. Yeah, taxi exemption signs should be added to relevant parts of the South Chiswick livable neighbourhood to assist in the clarity for Hackney carriages on their use of the schemes. So the vote I will be taking is on all of that. Obviously, that will be published in the decision that comes out after this meeting, but I thought it was important just to go through them. Can I see all those in favour, please? That is unanimously carried. Thank you very much. Good. Right. If anyone is from the audience looking to leave, please can I ask you a point of... Do we need a formal vote on that, Rachel? rejecting.
You're not taking that one anyway.
No,
are you?
that's right.
But
No,
we
it's
are-
just ignored.
Yeah. You included making it permanent, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's fine. Yeah. So you didn't include that in
No, it was
the
A1,
recommendations. So,
B, and
yeah,
C.
So it's just the ones that you put forward.
the ones I
isn't it?
put forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, good. Right. Thank you, everyone, on that. We now move on to agenda item 4, adult social care system reform. That's page 15 to 53 of your agenda pack. Can I invite Councillor Chowdhury? Please do remember to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Samir Chowdhury, Cabinet Member for Adult Health Integration. This report is about adult social care system reform program, strategic business case. Report summary is on page 15 from 2.1 to 2.4. Our aim and more our aim this report is it will be a more credible, stable and sustainable provider market through the fair cost of care reform, self-funders to access care and rates more run to local authority commissioned rates, and the new care cap on personal care cost will reduce the financial burden on many residents who required adult social care services. Residents to contribute less of their personal wealth towards the cost of their care through the increasing the main means testing thresholds. Further mistake and integration of the health and social care services will support good outcomes of residents and the maximization of resources, financial benefits to the local economy and applicable residents due to the new charging reforms. The table on page 20, 4.12, 4.12 is on page 20, and all the projects are on page 21, 4.16. With the note of that, I'll ask Cabinet to agree the following recommendations, which are on page 15, recommendation 1, 2, and 3, and I'll move the report. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. I'll formally second and reserve my right to speak. It's now open for questions or comments. Anybody indicating? Councillor Bath, please do introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Councillor Lily Bath, Cabinet Member for Children, Education and Learning. I wasn't going to make any comment, but I think it's quite important to say this. Obviously, this is the right direction to go because we have to look at how we contain spend in adult social care. And also, if you think about the rise and the demand on services, I think Councillor Chowdhury and I were meeting with officers not that long ago. We were talking about new statutory duties that we have, which are not actually funded. And I think this seems to be the pattern. And I think it's important to recognise that, because somewhere in this report, I have read that we do spend very little on adult social care, and we actually have really good outcomes in Hounslow. And I think that's important to recognise that, because I guess it's the future is going to be even more difficult in terms of demands on adult social care. We saw that with COVID, and no doubt it will get even worse. So it's important that we do find a way that we kind of try the prevention agenda as much as possible so that we cut down on costs. So I think it's a really good way forward. And I do commend everybody in the team for doing such a good job, because after all, adult social care, it basically means we are protecting some of the most vulnerable in our community with very little resources often. And given that we still are waiting on any national government policy in adult social care, I think it's absolutely the right way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bath. Anyone else? Can't see anyone. Yeah, I just want to echo your words, Councillor Bath, and thank you, Councillor Chowdhury, for bringing this forward. It is, adult social care is one of our biggest spend areas, and it really does make a difference for the lives of our residents, especially our vulnerable and elderly residents. And life will become harder, but I think we demonstrate time and time again, despite uncertainty nationally and low spend, that actually we're innovating, and a lot of the reforms that are mentioned within here will help that. And for me, what this speaks to is, in many respects, it's quite a live document still. You know, it will flex and bend and change as things change. So we're responsive to demands, which is very, very difficult when your demand pressure and your costs are going up every time. So commend you for the work on this. Thank you for bringing it forward. And again, like you, Councillor Bath, I put my thanks on the record to the team who are doing such a good job under very difficult circumstances often. So it has been moved and seconded. I can't see anyone else indicating. The recommendations on this are on page 15, 1, 2, and 3. Can I see all those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move to the Children's Model of Care Programme, page 54 to 100. Councillor Bath, over to you.
Thank you. So obviously another very big budget spend area. What I am proposing to Cabinet tonight is that you approve the recommendation to develop a new model of care for children's social care. So what we are really hoping to do is to redesign how we deliver children's social care in Hounslow. So it will be, there'll be, with this report, you will find an appendix, and in that appendix, you'll have a business case on what we propose to do, and the underlying principles behind why we are doing this is very similar to the previous report before. We spend quite a lot, we overspend on children's services, and we have done for a number of years. And the demand rises, but we don't have the budget that we would necessarily want or require to carry out, to deliver these services. So we need to obviously be aware of that. That is a big challenge, but we also need to make sure that we have a more of a preventative approach in terms of trying to reduce the cost. So that the idea is with all of this model is that we try and tackle problems very early on, have a holistic approach, a family sort of hub model approach, where we try and try and help families at a very early stage before their problems escalate and start costing a lot. So that's the objectives and principles behind the model. Also, there's a couple of local drivers as well. Our outcomes for children in Hounslow do need to improve. And I'm hoping that with this model, we'll be able to make more improvements in that particular area. In terms of the national direction, in terms of where we are going with children's social care, there was a review which was published recently. The government commissioned a review, and one of the recommendations of the review was to have a family hub kind of model. So this would align with what the government's recommendations are. So this is a business case which outlines all the different projects that will be part of this model, the social care model. And so what I'm asking Cabinet to do is to agree all the recommendations, which are 1 to 3, and also to approve a budget allocation of 3 to 5.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm done. So if you can, I think I've lost my thread now. So yeah. So if we can agree recommendations 1 to 3, and for approval for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bath. Sorry about that. I'll formally second that report. It's now open and reserve my right to speak. Sorry. It's now open for discussion and debate. Anybody? Councillor Shaheen.
Thank you. Leader, Councillor Salman Shaheen, Cabinet Member for Parking, Parks and Leisure. I just wanted, it's a small comment really, but we spent some time discussing the first item on South Chiswick, and I think it's obviously very important that we did so. And it's worth recognizing that if there are any news headlines coming out of this meeting, it will be on that. But the bulk of what we do, the vast bulk of what we do, is looking after the most vulnerable residents, some of the most vulnerable people in the country, adults and children. So I want to thank Lily, and I want to thank Samia before her for bringing these two vital reports forward, because this is what matters. This is what the daily business of council is about. And it doesn't always get residents animated. It doesn't always make news headlines, but it is vital work. So thank you.
Absolutely right, and outcomes are so important for young people. They're the future people that will sit around this table at some point once we're all old and decrepit, some earlier than others. Yeah, absolutely essential. I wasn't talking about you, Stephen, obviously. Good. Anyone else on this? Councillor Bruce.
Yeah, to echo those words of Salman there. I mean, it was exactly what I was going to say. In fact, I was going to say that the audience in person had halved for these two items after the first one, but it amounts to the same thing. Yeah, this one and the previous item are incredibly important. High spend, highly complex, more so than even what Catherine was describing earlier. And we know incredibly important for those young people and adults as well who require our much loved service. I'm not going to add anything else to what Lily said. I think she's covered it brilliantly. Only to say that I'm really pleased to see, and this was some early discussion that I had when I had this portfolio under the previous administration, that was about developing a new children's home. So I'm pleased to see that work is still continuing, and that we're looking at all we can, not just to save on costs, to bring young people back into the borough because it is more cost effective, but the quality of what is on offer here, it's not to say it's bad when they're external, but it can be sometimes it can be a challenge to get it consistent. I'm gonna put it in that way. The children's home we have in this borough is exceptional, and I'm highly proud of it. And the adding an additional one to that will only mean that more young people can benefit from what Hounslow is able to give. So I thank you for continuing that and it being highlighted in this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bruce. Anyone else? Okay, I can't see anyone else. So the recommendations, as Councillor Barth said, are on page 54, 1, 2, and 3. Can I see all those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Great. Good. Now that we move on to agenda item 6, the Armed Forces Covenant Renewal 2023, page 101 to 198. Councillor Garrawell's got a bit of a bad throat, so she's here, but I will introduce it on her behalf so that you don't have to hear her coughing through it. Sorry, Councillor Garrawell. So I think all I'm going to say on this is, whilst we don't have an active military presence in the borough, we're very proud about our links in the borough with military personnel, many of whom still call Hounslow home. And we have a new duty under changes to legislation to have a covenant, but we've had one for many years that's worked very, very well. This renewal takes into account some of the changes required by legislation, but is also absolutely the right thing to do to support those who have served and sacrificed for us, for our freedoms, and the life that we enjoy. And now call Hounslow their home. So I formally move the covenant renewal, which will include a formal signing ceremony at a later date as well. And the recommendations are on page 101. You're at second.
Yes, I second the report. God, I'm losing my voice now, and reserve my right to speak.
Okay, it's now open for discussion and debate. I saw Councillor Sam. No. Oh, right. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Sue. Councillor Bath.
Thank you, Leader. As someone who actually grew up right next door to the barracks, actually, I do remember what an iconic presence it had in our community. And although we don't have an active military service at the moment, I think it's hugely important what we are doing here. Occasionally, not very often, but from time to time, I do sometimes get approached by personnel or families that were based here, and some of them can have some very complex problems. So I think it's absolutely important that we have that support in place for them. So I absolutely support this, and look forward to being invited to the ceremony.
Councillor Thompson.
Just a very quick one. It says within the report that all parties will be agreeing to the covenant, and normally that sort of thing would sound a bit presumptuous, but actually, because no one's asked us, but you're on a safe on this one, because obviously, of course, we're going to support this one. Why wouldn't we? And I think it's good actually, that as the report says, and as Councillor says, that we refresh people's minds and memories about this one. And it's totally right and fitting that those who serve and their families should get what they are totally entitled to, which is to be treated fairly by any organisation such as this council. So obviously, whenever it's signed, when it goes to Borough Council next, we'll be fully behind it. Thank you.
No. Okay, so the recommendations are on page 101, 1, 2, 5. Can I see all those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Good. Right, we now move on to agenda item 7, Dockless e-bike rental scheme trial, page 199 to 214. Councillor Dunn, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So this one may also generate headlines. I don't know, hopefully positive ones, but I'll keep it short because obviously you've read the report. The basis of this is to basically asking you to approve the introduction of a borough-wide dockless e-bike rental scheme in order to better regulate the operations that we see already, but also to introduce, we hope, introduce more bikes, more operators, more locations into the borough. So the key objectives around this are, of course, a part of our encouragement of people to undertake active travel, to cycle more as a whole or part of their journeys. And these dockless bike schemes do allow people to do that. E-bikes are becoming increasingly popular for very good reasons. I own an e-bike. It's a very good way to get around, especially those longer journeys when I want to cycle, say, into central London and to go to my job and not feel tired or in need of a shower when I get there. They're great for getting up hills. They're great for older people, people with certain disabilities, or anyone who just enjoys the feeling of going along on an e-bike. So they really are popular, and the rental schemes have been very popular in other boroughs as well. They are not, of course, without their problems, and we have seen some of those problems in Hounslow, partly due to the fact that we don't have an agreement with them at the moment. So Lime, the operator, does allow e-bike use within our borough. We have no formal agreement with them. People leave their bikes where they leave them. I'm sure you've seen them on the pavement, often fallen over in places that are not that helpful for others trying to get by. So by introducing a formal scheme with a memorandum of understanding, then we would be able to introduce more regulation to that. And one of the things we would say is that there should be dedicated parking bays for the e-bikes. We do hope that other e-bikes will sign, other e-bike operators will sign this as well, not just Lime. So there are about 4 different operators that operate in the surrounding boroughs, and we expect that they would want to be involved as well, but they would all be expected to sign up to the memorandum of understanding. This is taking place in other boroughs, and there is, in fact, there is a draft MOU that applies to the whole of London now. It's been worked on in conjunction with London councils and the operators, so they should be very well inclined to sign up to that. So yeah, so I'm saying let's go ahead with the trial of this. It will be done under our favourite thing, the experimental traffic management order, initially for 6 months, and then we'll see how it goes after that. That's basically it. Ward councillors will be consulted on the locations for the parking bays, but there are some guidelines around where and how many we would like to see, because if you don't have enough of them, you don't put them close enough together, then there's no incentive for people to use them, and they're more likely to either not use the scheme or to use it and leave the bikes lying in places they shouldn't. So it is important that we get those locations right, but we want to consult ward councillors on that as well.
Thank you, Councillor Dunn. Councillor Sheen, are you seconding?
I am indeed seconding, Leader, and I exercise my right to speak. Thank you very much, Councillor Dunn, for bringing this forward. Very happy to second this report. I think it's a move that brings us into line with what our neighbours are doing with Ealing and Richmond, and I think this is very important, because it's something of an anomaly that that you can hire an e-bike in Ealing or Richmond, but you can dump it in Hounslow, and there are no consequences for that. And I think that's very important. It's almost like in The Lion King, when Simba looks out and he looks at everything the light touches, but that dark spot. Well, that's Hounslow's e-bike policy currently, because we don't have one. So I'm very pleased that this administration is taking this very seriously and is bringing forward this e-bike policy. And which not only regularizes the hire of e-bikes, but also supports our active travel, our climate policies, and is vital, I think, for our residents' health and fitness.
Thank you, Councillor Sheen. You can tell you're a new father and what you were watching before you got to the meeting. Right, it's been moved and seconded. It's now open for debate. I saw Councillor Lambert first, then Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Leader. I'm the Cabinet Member for Environment, Highways and Operational Services. I have to read that every time. As people know, I'm a habitual cyclist. I use the human-powered version rather than the electric type, usually. But I have used the Lime bikes that hang around Brentford and Chiswick on occasions. And they're a real boon. Because they're available when you want one, even if you haven't got a bike with you. We have had small, I think very small concerns with people parking them in inconvenient places. It's never really been raised with me as an issue. I see it decried on social media from time to time. And I often cycle into Hammersmith, where they have docks, and it all seems to work very well to me. And having different operations involved may drive prices down, because it's not cheap to use a Lime bike. So I'm really keen on it. It'll be very helpful for a lot of people who want to get around, don't have a bike, and don't want to use their car or public transport. It'll take us into a new way of travelling around London. So all for it.
Thank you, Councillor Lambert. Anyone? Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. Sorry, Councillor Thompson.
I know I promise not to say much, but this might be the last one. That they are very handy and very popular. I'm just checking the app. Actually, there's 4 of them in my road at the moment, which is wonderful. But I think therefore that proves the point, doesn't it? We need to have some sort of system in place. I was down in Bournemouth with my family over Easter, and they have this they paint a green box on the ground, and that's where they will have to be. And I think that's better than what we have at the moment. Obviously, I'm just wondering about obviously it's a article memorandum. It's a gentleperson's agreement. Enforcement. I know in Wandsworth they're a bit more proactive on this one, and they drive around, and if they're not in the boxes, they pick them up and they shift them. I'm not suggesting we start that from day one. Is that an option perhaps down the line if we don't perhaps get the sort of compliance that we want? Because because obviously they are commercial entities, as Councillor Lambert said. They're not actually the cheapest things in the world. It costs me under £3 for me to get from my house to the surgery when I'm running late and I can't run down the high road quickly enough. So I've used them once or twice. But it's just a question about enforcement. And again, I know one of my colleagues asked me to mention that other parts of the world where these things are even more common than they are, they've moved away from sort of the box approach and actually have gone back to more like the Santander bikes with the docking stations. I know there's more cost there and more infrastructure issues, but that may be a thing also just to keep in mind as a possibility. If especially if not, hopefully it would one day, the mayor would consider moving it a bit further into our borough.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Anyone else? Can't see anyone. Would you like to sum up, Councillor?
Yeah, so to address the points around enforcement, so we would, as part of the MOU, we would be expecting the e-bike operators to be coming and removing bikes that were inappropriately parked. It's in their interests, obviously, to redistribute bikes to the places where people are going to be wanting to hire them from, because especially with the competition, which we hope there'll be, because then, if you turn up and there's other bikes available, but not one from a specific company, that they won't be getting any custom. So it is in their interest to do it, and we will be looking to enforce that through the MOU. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on things. Is it working? What we don't want initially, as you said, is for us to be having to drive around and move bikes around. That should be on them. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. But obviously, options will be open if needed.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dunn. The recommendations on this report are on 199 over to 200. So that's 1, 2, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Can I see all those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Dunn. Agenda item 8, emerging Hounslow and Brentford master plans. Councillor Bruce, over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be bringing 2 of our town centre master plans in front of you this evening. I'm sure those of you who can count will note that we have 4 town centres in the borough, and the other 2 are certainly not forgotten, and I will touch on them briefly in a bit. But tonight before you, we've got the one for Hounslow and the one for Brentford. I think we all know that our town centres, our high streets, are social and economic drivers for the borough and for our residents. They're where we go to meet with people, they're where we go to shop, they're where businesses are, not exclusively obviously, but it's where many of them are, and it's where people live, and we want to do all that we can to make it the best place for people to live and to work and to shop and to thrive, using some of our manifesto language. This fits very, very well within our corporate pledge, our manifesto pledges and our corporate plan. And it's exactly what we want to be doing as a borough. You'll note, if you've read the plans, that while they follow a similar pattern, we recognise that Hounslow and Brentford, and equally Feltham and Chiswick, when they come on online later in the year, they are undergoing work at the moment, are very different places. And what we're saying about the town centres within those plans highlights that fact, that while our town centres are important, they're different places, and we need to recognise that the residents there are accessing the businesses and the shops and the area in a different way. What this is the beginning of a conversation with residents. It isn't a done deal. It isn't us suggesting, here are some sites, this is what's going to be there, this is what should change, and that's it. This is about potential. This is about saying, well, here's what we think is possible, and now residents, businesses, developers, over to you. Let's have a conversation about these 2 areas at the moment, specifically these 2 areas at the moment. What can we do to enhance the lives of our residents? What can we do to improve the economic conditions of our businesses, and etc. from there? So I want people to recognise that there is huge potential with all that we're saying here, and that also there are plenty of opportunities for other things to come on stream. At the end of the Hounslow master plan, it talks about 2 sites that haven't been worked up in detail at all, but we realise their importance, and we've added them on, and we have highlighted that we will be doing some work on that in the next few weeks and months, in order to understand better about how we can work on those 2 sites. And there may be others that fall away, as has been highlighted here as well, and others that come on board as we go through. So I'm asking for Cabinet to approve the emerging Hounslow and Brentford master plans, to approve the approach to and going out to our formal consultation and having those conversations with all different people within our borough, and to delegate various things to the executive director, and note that the master plans will be adopted as planning guidance, but that hold a material weight for our planners in order to be able to shape our borough to the best for us all. That's for developers, but that's also for residents, and that's also for the council, making sure that we're all involved in this and it works for the best of us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bruce. Councillor Sampson, would you like to second?
Yes, Chair, I'd like to second. Councillor Sue Sampson, lead member for Housing and Homelessness. I would like to second Tom's report, Councillor Bruce's report, agenda item 8, and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sampson. It's been moved and seconded. It's now open for discussion and debate. Anybody? Councillor Lambert.
I'll confine myself to commenting on Hounslow, on Brentford, which I know very well, rather than Hounslow I know less well. There's been a huge amount of effort put into this preparation. It's been very well accepted by lots and lots of people who live in Brentford. Brentford is a town that needs a plan. And it's got a bit of a plan, but this will enhance the plan considerably, and give us a real chance to turn Brentford into what it really ought to be, with its 2 rivers and 1 canal, and docks and locks and all the other things that are really good there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lambert. Anyone else? Yeah, just from me echoing those words, Councillor Lambert, but across them, there's it shows that there's a great deal of work and thought that's gone into these plans. And what's often good, reports of the past where there was a lot of thought and work were presented in very bland ways. And actually this is very user-friendly and very good for those who are looking to input into this, and it gives them an easy route in, and really helps them understand. So commend you, Councillor Bruce, on the work that you've done on this and your team around this. And I suppose those watching at home and in the audience do get involved with this. The future of our town centres, all 4 of them, are incredibly important to us to support economic growth and support Hounslow and lift it up to a certain degree, because we're already doing really well, but we could always do better, and this really does support that. So fully commend this piece of work going forward. So can't see anyone else indicating. So the recommendations are on page 215, 1 to 4 there. Can I see all those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Almost there, colleagues, sorry. Agenda item 9, local plan review, the way forward. Back to you, Councillor Bruce.
Thank you very much. Colleagues may remember that I bought the focus reviews for the Great West Corridor and for west of the borough sometime last year, and that they were approved to continue the consultation with residents in September or October. We went out, we asked opinions on them, and we got a lot of responses. Now the approach is we're going to have to shift slightly from that. So it's not a case here that we're saying we're throwing everything out. Those who've read the report will see that potentially was an option. But here with the local plan and recognising the importance of the local plan and recognising the changing landscape of planning in London and planning in various boroughs and how the government are looking to approach planning coming through in the future. It gives us a huge opportunity to, what's said in the report here, is to technically withdraw what we were talking about at that point, keep all of that fantastic work, because it's taken place over a number of years since the last, really since the last iteration of our local plan in 2015, but to look at it all again holistically. So to be able to say in 2024 or maybe 2025 that we have a fully fledged comprehensive local plan. So that's what I'm asking that we do, that we continue the work on the areas that we've got here, that I ask officers to look closely at all of the volumes that are recommended here, and that we submit something later this year or early next year to the inspector that is fully comprehensive and really meets the up-to-date needs of our residents and of the borough. That is in terms of employment, that's in terms of housing, that's in terms of how we deal with developers, how developers can be guided by our planners. And it's really going to set the scene for taking Hounslow forward very clearly and strategically with development and planning and regeneration, particularly, that I'm very excited about in the future. It gives us an option to ask some questions. Again, we have been told by residents what they think of some things which they like and other things which they're not happy about. What it does mean that it does mean we get to talk again and to go again, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everything that people might want is going to be, going to be in it. The very nature of that of consultation means that you're going to get very different views and very differing views, and that will be from residents and developers and from members of the council. So we just need to be clear that while there's the opportunity, we also need to remember that what we've said already has got material weight, and that we expect that, regardless of how long this takes, to maintain that weight with our discussions with planners, with developers, with the planning team going forward. So to summarize, I'm asking that cabinet are happy to proceed with the following recommendations that are listed here. There are 6 there that mean we can continue the excellent work and come back with a fully comprehensive local plan within a suitable time frame. Let me say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bruce. Councillor Thompson, are you seconding?
Yes, Chair, I'd like to second agenda item 9, Councillor Tom Bruce's report. I would just like to add that this is a great opportunity for us to review and make sure that we, take forward the best way forward of the processes.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Right, it's open for discussion and debate. Councillor Bath first, then Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'd like to thank Councillor Bruce for bringing this report. I appreciate there's been a huge amount of work done on this over the years, but this does give us the opportunity to kind of listen to some of the concerns that have been raised by residents. I mean, I represent the Bedfont ward, and there's been some very strong feelings about some of the things that are contained within the plan. And hopefully with the focused consultations going forward, we can give those residents an opportunity to express their views in a formal way. As also, I mean, I do recall going to the previous consultations, and I have to say they were not very well attended. So that is often the way, isn't it? With things, you have consultations, and you want people to come, and they don't, and then suddenly people get upset about something, and it gets very big. So, but this for me is quite important, because I'd quite like to hear from other people that I haven't heard before either as well. So absolutely agree. This is the right way forward. Obviously, we have to have something really fit for future, because we want to be in a strong position where we can sort of guide developers in terms of our own priorities. But yeah, it's great. totally support this. Thank you.
Councillor Dunn.
Thanks. Yeah, just wanted to say well done to Councillor Bruce and the officers for putting together, putting forward the different options. But I really think that the one that's recommended is the best one, and it's a pragmatic way forward, but one that allows the local plan to be looked at as a whole, and it takes such a long time to put these documents together, and it can feel that you're going on and that things can feel out of date before they're even published. So I think this is the option that gives us that flexibility to be able to update things, to take on board views, but to move forward and actually get it done.
Thank you, Councillor Dunn. Anyone else on this one? Can't see anyone indicating. Okay, the recommendations are on page 388 and 389, 1 to 6. Well, yeah, 1 to 6. Can I see all of those in favour? That is carried. Thank you very much. Right, agenda item 10. I've not had any referrals to from any other council committees apart from what we discussed earlier this evening. Agenda item 11. Now, whilst we haven't had any urgent business, I think it's worth putting on record that this evening is the last meeting of our Executive Director for Finance, Clive Powerman. He looks at me like that every time I say it. Lots of lasts over the next few weeks. And I think it's important to put it on record. Obviously, there'll be an opportunity at your formal farewell to really embarrass you properly. But I think from my perspective as leader, but as also cabinet member and someone who arrived on the council very slightly before you did, a lot of what we've discussed tonight is underpinned by the hard work of your team, your finance team, and the leadership that you provided, and that steady hand. And I think it's really important to note that you've always made sure you're available for cabinet, individual conversations, corridor conversations, or more formal things with more cabinet members. And that stands us in good stead going forward. There are a number of challenges we're going to have to face over the next few months and years. Dare I say, a number of heated discussions over the next number of years. And I'm sure you'll be watching cabinet from home. Yeah, right. But actually, that will all come from actually the best legacy you could leave us, a strong financial position. And I hope cabinet would join me and agree that is in large part to your leadership, and thanks to you for all the work that you have done. And on a more personal note, thank you for your support as a new leader, but also as cabinet member in the last administration as well. Against my better judgment, I will open it up to cabinet members if they wish to say anything, just to really embarrass him before his leaving. Do
Do a round of applause.
Oh, we could do a loud round of applause. Yeah. He's loving it. He is loving it. Right, and that does bring us to the end of this meeting. The date of the next meeting is Tuesday, the 16th of May, starting at 7 p.m. here in Hounslow House. Can I thank colleagues and officers and those in the audience and those at home as well?